Welcome to Grandstand Therapy. I am Lori, and today we are going to dive into the Las Vegas Grand Prix. This is going to be a little bit of a different type of episode. Typically, I will start with any news that we have coming into the race weekend, and then, of course, throughout the weekend, from practice to qualifying to the race itself. But with the shocking news that we received in the early morning hours of Sunday morning, recording this episode today, Sunday, I have to start with that because it's that shocking. So we received in the early morning hours that McLaren, both drivers, Oscar and Lando, have received double disqualifications from the race. Ouch. I mean, wow. So I will say that, and we are gonna get into the heart of the race. However, about 2 laps before the end of the race, Lando was trying to chase down Max Verstappen. And the radio, they came on and said that you need to back off and preserve. So we kind of had, based on the announcers and our thinking, was something to do with maybe fuel. Either he didn't have enough fuel or he was burning too much fuel, because at the end of the race, there's a weight limit requirement. So even in the post-race show, they also talked about it there too. So you have a minimum weight requirement that the cars and the drivers must meet. That's why they weighed the drivers after each race and the cars themselves. So we weren't sure what was going to happen with that, but either way, we kind of knew they would be looked into. Also, they typically select 4 to 5 cars randomly to be checked for everything, including plank wear. And I don't know if Lando's car was selected already because of the other reasons, or if Oscar or Lando was randomly selected. They did not disclose any more than that. But either way, McLaren gets a letter summoned by the stewards to the review of what they had found during the review of the cars. They also summoned the drivers themselves too, but the drivers had already left the track. So this started after the race, and this went on for hours. The media was waiting outside the media pen. No word on what was happening, where it was going. We were checking. You could see things happening, but you didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know if it was taking too long because the drivers were not at the track anymore and they were trying to get them to come back, or what. But finally, about 2 in the morning Vegas time, they came back and said, FIA did, I should say, told the press that we have a double disqualification. There is a minimum tank requirement when you finish the race that it has to be at 9 millimeters. Now, most teams keep their cars about 10, but the minimum that you can be at when you're done with the race is 9 millimeters thick, and that's the plank on the bottom of the car. So with these ground deflect cars, they lower them to certain ride heights, bumping, scraping the ground. That's why you see the sparks flying at times. That is what wears the plank down. The reason that it took so long for them to come out with a statement is because McLaren was arguing with the stewards that this track is bumpy, that everybody would have experienced that. We had no run pace going in or testing going into this race because of the weather conditions that we had throughout the weekend, which we'll uncover in a bit. So what did the stewards and the FAA to say? Okay, we'll check all 18 cars for their plank wear. And McLaren was the only one that was below the 9 millimeter requirement. It was about 10% off. I want to say both were kind of equally around the same. I don't have the numbers sitting in front of me. But either way, the FIA submits out the information to the public, because that's public knowledge, that both drivers have been disqualified from the race. Ouch. What was crazy is that we in real time could see the standings for the race, for the finishing of the race, change, yet McLaren hadn't come out and made a statement at all. So that is shocking. And the thing is this, like, this happens every season. We've already had it happen to Hamilton this season in China. He was disqualified due to plank wear. It happened in 23 at the USGP with Leclerc and Hamilton. It's happened to Russell. It's happened to Hulkenberg. It's happened to many drivers. It happens at least once a season. But what astonishes me is this. McLaren are the champions this season. They secured that several races back. What are they doing? They know better. And it is, again, this could be a rumor perhaps, but in South Pala, which was the previous race, they were adjusting the skid blocks and the plank. And they probably went into this with, oh, we'll get away with lowering it as low as we can get it, because the lowest you can get the car to the ground with the aerodynamics of the car with heavy downforce tracks helps you to go obviously faster and control the car better, less balance, more balance, those kind of things. So unfortunately, they were selected and they were disqualified because of it. And I hate that for their drivers, because obviously we're in the heart of a championship battle going on. And it was pretty much Lando had it in the bag. I still think he does. But now that this has happened, we are left with Oscar and Max both tied at 366, Lando at 390. So Lando is 24 points ahead of Max and Oscar. Now, Oscar still sits at second and Max third, only because he's won 7 races and Max has won 6. But otherwise, either way, they're one race win behind. I still think it's a tall order for Max Verstappen to pull that off, but either way, McLaren completely just screwed Lando. So let's unpack now the race weekend. Now that shocking news has come out, we definitely needed therapy for that. Holy cow. All right, so going into the weekend, I wanted to start off with a couple of things that kind of came out. We had some amazing liveries come out this week. I thought B-Carbs was awesome with a hologram. It didn't look as great on the track, though, that I anticipated underneath the lights, but still looked really awesome. Then we had Stake for their last race year. They've got like 3 left, so they are going to be Audi next year. So they kind of did a little checkered flag around the green carbon, which I thought was kind of cool. At least the delivery, when you saw the video of it, it was really kind of cool. Also, Alpine did make some more pink, but let's be frank, that wasn't that noticeable. But the star of the show was Lewis Hamilton's helmet. That looked amazing. It was like a disco ball. Super cool. Some other things that kind of came up that before we get into the race weekend was, okay, so for 26, with the liveries, the cars themselves, 55% of the car now must have some type of paint or stickers on it. It can't be all carbon fiber, which is awesome because we get to actually see cars that are bright and vibrant. I mean, as opposed to just only the V-carb really giving us something. So this way, all cars will have to have some color to them or stickers on them. And also Audi is, they're kind of been showing their kind of livery, what their car's kind of specs are going to look like going into 26. And Alpine had a robbery at their factory. Crazy. All right, so let's get into the race itself. All right, so race weekend, let's say. It had been pouring down rain in Vegas all week long. I mean, floods pouring down. So I was like, oh my God, what are we going to get into? So by the time we get to the race, they do some practice sessions. They do have a little bit of dry running there, but not a whole lot. They weren't really able to test a lot of the long pace runnings because we had some red flags during the practice session too. I don't typically watch practice sessions, but let me tell you, I watched every single one this race, and there was something in every single one, which this episode would be way too long if I covered every single thing that happened, so I'm not going to do that. But we had a lot of red flags in the practice sessions. There were people spinning out crazily. It wasn't even raining. It was just so slippery. Extremely, when you get to Vegas, it's cold. It's the desert. It's a night race. The tires were just sliding all over the place, even the slicks. It was kind of like on an ice skating rink. And it wasn't even really raining. It was just damp, let's call it. Then we get into qualifying session. Qualifying was crazy. It was raining. You could not see. Carlos Sainz had at one point during this weekend said that he could not even see the car in front of him or the cars behind him. It's already a treacherous type of environment track, and you couldn't even see, which was crazy. We also had a red flag during the practice session for another manhole potential coming up. They flagged it. We sat and waited on, I guess that was Thursday night when they had the practice session. We sat and waited for them to check it out. The FIA checked it out. They felt like it was secure. They started the session back up, only for them to do another yellow flag virtual safety car because they thought again it was up. So I'm like, what are we happening here? So this happened the first year in Vegas. If you are new to Formula One, the first year this happened. Last year wasn't as bad. We didn't have any occurrences, but it kind of makes sense. We had so much rain. I get those might have been compromised a little bit, but again, you kind of should know that going into this race because we've already had it happen before. So qualifying again, it was pouring down rain. And the first, I would say the first, I kind of made notes. It was so long ago, like I have to go back to everything. So it was very wet. Let's see. We had people out on full wet tires in Q1. Q1, Behrman hit the wall with 43 seconds left. Leclerc had ended his session with an engine failure. It kind of sounded like he lost the rear of the car. Out in Q1, then we also had Alex as well at 0.02 seconds. He said on the radio, too much speaking. And then, of course, we had Gabby and Kimmy and Yuki and Hamilton out in Q1, which was ouch. For Hamilton, I didn't even have time to get into the Ferrari craziness of this week, but I'm sure you probably know because you followed it. All right, so then we also get into then Q2. In Q2, we had eliminated Hulkenberg, Stroll, Arcon, Behrman, and Colapinto. And in Q3, we had all in the intermediate. So at the end of the day, the qualifying session for the last round was very exciting. I didn't know what was going to happen. It was pouring down rain. It's every man's for himself. So in the end, Lando did get pole, Max was P2, and Sainz was P3. He is a Vegas specialist, that Sainz guy. Totally awesome. And what floored me is that throughout that qualifying session, it was crazy that we did not have any red flags. I mean, who would have thought? So there you go. So we're going to get into the race. The race itself. So Yuki decided to start Yuki start from the pit lane. They did a new power unit change on him. I mean, he was already down there at the bottom, P20, or yes, maybe P19. I don't remember at this point. But either way, they had to put a new power unit on his car. And so he started from the pit lane. Hamilton was P20. And I felt so awful for Hamilton going into that. So we knew so it was a dry race, which was awesome. So we knew that going into turn one, you had Max P2, Lando P1, that Max, even though that side of the track can be dirty, there was going to be a fight going into turn one to see how that was going to go. Oh my gosh, and we had that. So turn one was amazing. Lando did try to go across the track, but then went too wide, locked up to avoid hitting Max, went wide, Max went through, Russell goes through, so Lando ends up in P3, and then also behind that, we had Oscar tumble down 2 places, and then even further back than that, you had a huge mess. Gabby Bortolotto just kind of dived in, trying to pass. He almost hit the Williams, and then nails the back of Stroll's car. We had Alpines go spinning. We had, of course, Lance Stroll's hold back out. And, of course, Bortoletto's car was damaged. So they did not red flag the race. They did yellow flag it. So they had to clear up. They got the cars off the track. And then we had some debris on the road. That was kind of interesting because they had some marshals during the virtual safety car that were just randomly running on track. Not even in the area where the debris was. I don't know what was happening there. I don't know if there's miscommunication amongst race control. And they left the debris out there for quite some time. when Alex and Hamilton had a little collision a little bit later, they didn't even throw a yellow flag out. There's just debris in the middle of the road. And then finally they throw the yellow flag out. So that happened. So then we get on to the battle. So, okay, so this was super impressive. So Kimi Antonelli, I mean, 2 weeks in a row is he pulling out. He started P17 and ends up sitting at P4 and running those hard tires. Now, he did start on soft tires and changed to hard pretty much when the yellow flag came out. So I want to say did 10 laps on the soft tires and then went to the hard tires. And he was running those hard tires for 39 laps of that 50 lap race. He was pushing so hard. And there, as we got into the heat of the race, he's holding off Oscar behind him, which Oscar's trying to get ahead of him. Obviously, he's got championship on the line, trying to catch up to Lando. He's trying to push against him. And behind him, you got Charles Leclerc. Okay, Charles Leclerc. Oh my gosh. Best radio message. I'm not even going to say of the day. I'm going to say best radio message of the year. Leclerc comes on the radio and he's like, I am pushing like an animal. That was so funny. And then he is literally passing people after passing people as fast as he can. And I'm like, you go, boy. I mean, they were talking, CEO was talking stuff about him last week in the press and saying they need to stop talking and drive more. And he was proving that case. He was passing people like crazy, pushing like an animal. And I just kept saying the whole race, go you animal, because I was just dying. That was awesome. So he catches up to the back of Oscar, and he's trying to pass Oscar, who's then trying to pass Kimi. So they're in a DRS train for quite some time. Meanwhile, Max is out in front, just banging in the laps. But what's interesting is, so when you started to get their pit changes, because we knew that they were all in most of them, the top of the field, I should say, were on medium tires for majority of the race. And so we knew they would have to make a shift over because those mediums were not going to hold up for the entire race. They hadn't really done a whole lot of race pace on those hard tires. So they really didn't know how long they would last, how they would perform. Because again, it's super cold in Vegas. It takes a long time for those tires to heat up. So we didn't really know how those hard tires would hold up, longevity, and it takes a while to get them warmed up. So when you pit, it's 21 seconds to pit and come out from the pit. And then it takes a bit for your hard tires to kind of warm up. So you got to time it strategically, because the person that you're battling with when you come back on the track will be on, warmer tires potentially. So they could kind of screw up your positioning. So Red Bull kind of waited a bit. I think McLaren decided to kind of do it a little sooner. They did that. Max kind of stayed out, kind of kept the pace going. So by the time that I was to say Mercedes with Russell, they actually pitted him as well to try to get him ahead of the traffic, to get him back into the podium contendants. And so Max, by the time he did pit, he was able to he was about 21 seconds. So he was able to get back out in front. And the matching of the pace with him and Lando, it was crazy there for a while. I would say, I don't know, last 7-8 laps. Max did have a pretty good cushion. He had about, I want to say he got up to like 6-second cushion, which is huge in Formula One. But they were matching. They were like trading places. One fastest lap, the next guy was fastest lap, then it was Lando, then it was Max, and so forth. They went back and forth for the last, 10 laps of that race. But you knew something was up when then Lando started to drop back. So Lando started to drop back. Again, I kind of brought this up at the beginning of the podcast. A lot of that was because we think that they was trying to preserve fuel. And they asked him to sit back. Russell was a pretty good distance behind Lando at that point of the race. So he had enough that he could drop back and still stay second on the podium, but because he wasn't catching Max, and he would be well enough to where Russell's not going to be able to catch Lando. But it got a little dicey there before the last 2 laps. Like, I really felt like another couple of laps, I think Russell might could have caught Lando due to whatever was going on with the fuel situation. All in all, we ended up finishing the race. Max Verstappen wins the race. Lando P2, Russell P3, Oscar P4, and Kimi Antonelli P5. And we'll talk about the rest because that clearly all changes now with the double disqualification. So I always love Vegas, at least the last 2 years, because they do an amazing, what I call the cool down room that we usually get every race weekend, but they were putting them in the back of a Rolls Royce for the last 2 years. This is only our third year. They put them in there and they drive them around to the Bellagio to do their interview session. And then they come back to the podium celebration there at the circuit. So can't wait. And Nolan over, does Terry Crews pull up? We love Terry Crews. Interviewed them last year in Vegas. He's amazing. He loves it. He's hilarious. But he pulls up none other than a Lego pink Caddy. It was awesome. All three of the drivers, super, super giddy. And at least we got Max and Lando and Russell together in that pink cool down room with Terry Crews because they were funny to watch together. Max immediately grabs these glasses that he puts on, made out of plastic, pink glasses, and then Russell puts his on, and then Terry Crews is giving them toys to play with in the back seat. There was like this little car with the things they could move around on this little pad, and Max was asking questions about how fast does this thing go, and then Terry just starts singing, making my way downtown. I mean, it was hilarious. It was so great. So they're cruising around the track, and you can tell they're all three just giddy and loving every minute of it. And then, which is what we love to see. I mean, the Lego cars were the same concept back in Miami. So then they get around to the Bellagio in front of the fountains at the Bellagio, and they're going to be interviewed by David Coulthard, DC. This was my favorite interview session of the season. I think probably ever. So they interview Max first, of course, as winning, and David says, "This is your 69th win, Max, and you're going to go to the Russian roulette table and put down 69. Since it's your number 69." He's like, "Yeah, maybe 1 and 69." So, and he's like, "I don't think we can talk about that on TV," which was hilarious. And then they get over to Lando and they start talking to him about, that start of the race, how he let that get away from him at the beginning. And he said, "Well, I'll let Max have this win." And then Max looked at him and he said, "Okay, well, really, I just fucked it up." And we were like, Max's face and Russell's face were priceless. I mean, priceless. Did you really just say that live on TV? Because you're going to get fined for that. So he might get that fine coming too. So that was really just a great press conference. They just went back and forth with that. And then, of course, they're taken back to the podium celebration where they came out and they, they're up on these platforms. I joked because the first year of Vegas, they had these big platforms and they all brought them out like the Hunger Games. So at least they don't do that to them this time around. So they're up there and was really awesome because Max's engineer was up there with MGP for the celebration. So they did that. And the whole mood did seem kind of off. Lando's mood did seem kind of a little bit off at that point. So I don't know. I don't know if McLaren kind of gave him some inside scoop that this potentially they were going to be investigated afterwards or what. But either way, the whole thing is just crazy. And I'm so irritated with McLaren for letting this happen. So, okay, so that was kind of in a nutshell. I know that was a lot to unpack, but that was kind of in a nutshell of kind of race craziness. I felt like it was an exciting race. There was lots of overtakings. I was irritated a little bit during the broadcast. I will say that, as I think we all talk about every weekend. There, at the end there, when Lando potentially was going to run out of fuel, trying to catch Max, trying to back up, maybe Russell was going to catch Lando. We are not seeing that on the track. We are seeing battles going on in the back of the track. Now, I like to see that too, but put it on what is the most important, relevant thing that we should be watching at the time of appropriate times. I don't know why they screw that up every single race, but they do. So that was a little bit irritating. Also, some radios of the day. I already talked about Leclerc's, which was radio of the year, but also we had Alex Albon came on at one point on his and said, or didn't say anything because his radio wasn't working. So he had a broken wing when he hit Hamilton, or Hamilton him collided, I should say. So when he came in to change things, they didn't change it. And he was like pointing at it because his radio wasn't working. So the pit wall was having to do old school communicating with his radio. Then McLaren had come on to the radio to Lando at one point during the race and said, go and get Max. Or he said, overtake Russell and go get Max. Then Max's engineer comes on the radio and said, Max, McLaren's already told Lando to come after you. Beware at this turn, this turn, and this turn. Max didn't even say anything, but he didn't have to because he responded by pushing up to about 6 to 8 seconds ahead. So he responded in that way and, of course, pulled off the win. So those were kind of the radios of the day. I have to give my award, let's call it VIP of the day, to, again, Kimi Antonelli. Kimi Antonelli going from P17 to P5 before the disqualification. So that is my VIP of the day. But we did have change in order because of the disqualification. So our new race order, let's call it, we had Max Verstappen, P1, that did not change, but then George Russell is now P2, and Antonelli got himself a podium at P3 because of the disqualifications. That put Leclerc at 4th, Sainz at 5th, Hadjar at 6th, Hulkenberg's P7. Thankfully, Lewis Hamilton recovered to P8 from 20, Esteban 9, and Ollie Behrman 10. So now Haas Performance, both double points again, both Ferrari double points, and of course Mercedes double podium now, and that puts them pretty far ahead in the Constructors' Championship for that second place in the Constructor. I think about 40 points ahead at this point. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but that's pretty much as close as you're going to get. So also now let's talk about the championship. Kind of touched on that in the beginning, but that leads us going into Qatar next weekend. So again, we had a triple header up against us until the end of the season. So that was one down. We got 2 more to go. Next week is Qatar. We also have a sprint race next weekend. So we got 33 points up for grabs next weekend. They have already decided, Pirelli has come out and said there will be a mandatory 2-stop strategy going on and with the tires in Qatar, because these tires will not go beyond 25 laps. So that's going to be interesting, the tire management for the weekend, because again, you have a sprint weekend. So you're only going to have 1 practice session, and then you're going to be having 2 qualifying sessions and essentially 2 races. So it's going to be very interesting how it unfolds. At this point, Lando has a 24-point lead. So that's one race win. However, he can pretty much just has to finish 2 points ahead. If he wins the race, he could still win the championship. I do still think that's what's going to happen. But it makes it spicy at the end of the day, either way. So we could have a decision made next weekend, or we could go all the way down to Abu Dhabi in the last race of the season. So let's, as a Formula One fan, of course, I love Max Verstappen. He's my guy. I would love him to win his 5th world championship. At the same time, I do still think it's Lando winning the championship. We just want excitement, and we are getting it. I didn't like it like this. I don't like anyone to be disqualified from anything. I hate that this has happened to either one of these drivers. That pretty much cut Oscar down to a minimum. I do think that probably Max has a leading edge over Oscar at this point. I don't know what's going on with Oscar's head, but either way, it's not looking good for Oscar. So let's see what happens, and I thank you for joining me. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please join me. And I am winded from this episode. I don't know about you guys, but what a whirlwind weekend. And I look forward to seeing you next week. So as always, please come back to Grandstand Therapy and F1 Pod, and have a great week. Bye.